build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Oh, well, they gave me ball, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober as good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers. This is episode 150. Joined tonight by John and Colin as usual, but also delighted to welcome Tony Anderson from the Terrace podcast. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm great, mate. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Colin, how are you doing?
Good. Aye, good. Just started watching the Formula One there, so you've interrupted that.
Right, we fix your moment, eh? Record it or something. If you just hear random meow, meow, background, then you can what it is.
Can I record it the way I watch things?
Yeah. And John, how are you doing?
I am alright, thanks. Sorry I was late getting started. I was having a wee nap on the couch.
Oh yeah.
Aye.
Go peep, eh?
Got myself a wee second one, so here I am.
That's a sign of your age, mate, that. When you start having naps through the day.
I was up at
evening.
20 to 6 this morning with a bairn. So that was fun.
You're allowed then. I quite like a wee nap. I've not had a wee daytime nap for fucking ages, but
actually partook in one today. I was at a wedding on Friday, my fiance's brother, and I was feeling horrific all day yesterday. And then I went to Hawksmoor. I don't know if you know it, in Edinburgh, the day for a Sunday roast. And then I just came home and just passed out within a element of seconds when the football was on the background. And what a treat! What a fucking treat it is.
Whereabouts is Hawksmoor about?
Okay, it's just opposite Andrew Square. It's in one of the little side alleys next to Lady Libertine, which might be. So it's a nice wee restaurant. It does a Sunday roast for 23 quid. I don't know why I'm now repping for it, but here we are.
tends to be what we do in this as well. We're talking about pies or
hopefully get something for free,
biscuits.
see Sunday roast for 23 quid. Is that not just a fancy carvery?
It's pretty fancy, obviously. It's shallots rather than onions, you know, that type of grill. It's doing that one. It was really good though. I would say it was good.
Speaking of giving shout-outs and stuff like that, I want to give a shout-out to Titch Curry at the Harping Castle, who we met on Saturday before the game and shouted us a couple of pints, so that was very nice. Thanks, Titch.
Never shouted me a pint in his fucking puff either.
Yeah, he actually said, John, that you were a dickhead. He's that once he was doing the wanker side of that dickhead, John. I said, oh, Ken, he's a fucking nightmare. He said, he's always having naps. I said, Titch, he's a fucking nightmare for the naps. So you can pick that up with him next time you see it. Kind of how he knew that about you, John, but there you go. Right. So, Tony, we asked Sean, the Terrace podcast and a view from the Terrace as well, because you made your TV debut. I presume that was your debut. You don't been doing other TV moonlighting as anything else, have you?
No one's ever asked me to do anything else, no.
Aye, so we, I'm like an admin on Hibs.net, and although this podcast should be clear, completely independent of Hibs.net, one of the things that we picked up, right? So I quite like a view for the Terrace on a Friday night, and quite often you'll see a thread on Hibs.net kind of slaughtering the Terrace because it's Hearts or perceived Hearts tendencies or leanings. So we thought we would give you a shout, see if you want to come on, and then sort of kind of put the record straight a wee bit. So for anybody that's not familiar with the Terrace, how would you describe it, Tony?
Well, the podcast, which is where it sort of was where it was born and what it's derived from now, that started, maybe the year 2008, maybe. I mean, even longer. I mean, Craig Fowler, who sort of runs the podcast, he started it when he was at university. He was doing sort of sports journalism there, and it was him and Kenny Miller, who used to sort of work for Hibs till very, very recently. They started the podcast together with another journalist called Alan Temple, and those guys done it. But then once they graduated, obviously work came in. They all moved into different places and started working apart. So Fowler, he loved it. He liked doing the podcast, so he started to get other people involved, and that's when he asked me, since I'd went to high school with him, and sort of Joel Sked, who's on the TV now. And us three done it for quite a few years, but we wanted to branch out. We wanted to grow into it and to sort of get more voices on. So from there, I mean, we've had Craig Anderson, Tom Watt, Gary Cocker. I mean, that's like Aberdeen, Kilmarnock. Sean McGuigan, who's a Wraith Rovers fan. And then Craig Telfer, who many will know is the host of A View for the Terrace. Obviously, we got them because they used to do a podcast called Tell 'Em It's Pelly, and a website which is all about the lower leagues. And we really, really wanted to focus on sort of getting voices heard and sort of expertise across all the leagues. So rather than me and Fowler sort of reading up stuff to try and pass off as knowledge about sort of the fag end of Scottish football, we actually wanted to bring people in. And from there, it's sort of grown and grown. We do, I mean, you guys are pretty impressive for the amount of content that you put out there. I notice on Spotify and on Twitter, but we try to do the best. We've got Patreon subscribers now, so we're really, really lucky that we're able to make money out of something that started as a serious hobby, and it's something we pinch ourselves about severely regularly, as you can imagine, with getting the TV show and stuff. But about 3 or 4 years ago, we were approached to make a pilot because the BBC Scotland channel had got involved, and they were really looking for a sort of like a football magazine show. So not like a highlights package, but something, a Friday night, maybe like a bit of a Scottish football show for drunk people, really, on a Friday night. And they put that together, went up against some other ones, and we were really fortunate to get the job. And they worked alongside a studio called Studio Something, which is an Edinburgh-based studio, again, with guys that were similar ages. And it's quite a nice story because they'd merely done advertising at the time, but this was their first foray into television. So it was quite nice that the studio that was going to make it and the guys that from the podcast were going to do it, no one had ever really made or done TV before, as I'm sure people might have noticed in the early seasons. And as I said, I was really fortunate enough I lived abroad at the time after I'd sort of moved away from the podcast, and I'd lived abroad for about 3 years when it happened, and I was pleased to come on, and I was fortunate enough to get asked to get involved. But we just try to cover Scottish football, especially through the TV show, man. I don't know if anyone sees it, but the features especially, I mean, you're talking, it's not just like Scottish football, there's women's football, there was disabled football that was covered. I mean, they cover guys like strip collections. Like, we really tried to get the essence of Scottish football, not just on the pitch, but off it. And I think it's a really sort of sweet and loving sort of TV show for Scottish football.
The features are spectacular, by the way. It's probably like the best. Well, I mean this in a disrespectful way, but the best part of A View for the Terrace is the features, because I give you what you said about capturing the essence of Scottish football was spot on. Like there was the one about the Wraith Rovers away fans and everything, and it's just like, it was just genuine. Like so you watch all of them. If it's like I can't remember the team one was way up north playing in the middle of nowhere. I think it was further up than that, Colin. Was it? Well, there was Fort William were on it as well, because they were awful at the time, weren't they? They were
the worst team in Scotland.
In Scotland. But I think that's probably the highlight for me as a viewer of A View for the Terrace is the features. I think you could almost kind of remember when Oasis were really, really good, and they had all the B-sides and they put them onto one album. So you can make one kind of documentary sort of type show just out of the features and strip away all the rest of it, and it would stand up on its own. And the podcast itself, so what's the format of that, Tony?
Well, as I say, we do two shows a week that are free. So that's a Monday and a Thursday. Monday's obviously covering the Scottish Premiership for the weekend. And then Thursday, it can change, but on the whole, we try to do that to get Telfer and Sean to do a lower league podcast that day. And then we've got tiers of sort of £2, £5, and £7 a month for the Patreon, and we take that very seriously. I mean, there's content that goes up every single day about every single club that you can imagine, all these different things, and with managers. It's vast. I mean, I find I can't keep up with it all. I can't listen to it all. So that's something else. I mean, people, if to go on to the sort of the original point of what you were saying about sort of like lots of Hearts fans. Fowler is a massive Jambo, and he started it, and that's why probably from the early days there was more Hearts fans involved, because that was his place to get guys to do it. That's when he knew Joel through university, so he got him in. Another guy, Craig Cairns, he went ahead and got him in as well, because he lived locally and was a Hearts fan. And then in recent years, Robert Borthwick, who's who I imagine pisses a lot of people off from the Hibs for his Twitter output, really. But it's not to be taken so seriously, man. But something I wanted to say is that it isn't for everyone. Simply, if some fans only really, like you guys, they want to hear what Hibs fans think about Hibs, and they're not really interested in a Dundee fan's opinion or a Wraith Rovers fan or most likely a Hearts fan. And I totally get that. And I don't think people should like feel bad about that at all. I think that's totally like by preference of what people are willing to listen to. But if you are more into the sort of depth, the Scottish football, and because I know my stepdad's a Jambo, for example, and he just goes to Hearts games. He's no interest in the wider avenue, and I totally understand that. But other people, obviously, they are in the wider one, and the effort that gets put into the research that gets put into. I mean, we pay a subscription to Y-Scout. I mean, you guys were talking off air about when we tried and talked about tactical stuff between sort of St Mirren and Livingston. That the reason we're able to do that is because we buy Y-Scout. So I'm able, if I'm doing a show, we normally would I'd watch the Hibs game because I'd go to it, and then if there was another two people on the show, we'd all pick another game that we would watch over the weekend, and we can use Y-Scout to do that, even if it's not on the telly. And then, so it means that when a Monday show's coming on, it's everyone there's watched the entire 90 minutes of every single game. So that's the kind of sort of love and dedication that goes into that, because we understand that if we want to speak with authority on every single team, like we try to do, then we're going to have to do that, and you're going to have to financially go away and figure out a way to make that a reality. And then on top of that, like I say, we invite people from all over the country to do sort of specific pods on their clubs on the Patreon at different times. But whether people want to listen to Hibs, I mean, Hibs fans, Hearts fans talk about Hibs, I get it. You might not be interested, but I mean, Fowler, in terms of his knowledge about Hibs, I mean, he goes to Hibs games for his work, and he's watching Hibs games on Y-Scout as well, so he can speak with authority about what he sees on the park. It isn't just, I hate Hibs, they're shite, blah, blah, blah. He's watching.
I quite like listening. I've listened to Terrace since probably about when we won the cup, because it was like at the time, we were trying to listen to everything about it at the time. And I remember you saying something like, I think one of them had says about somebody, Rangers players or something, being injured on the pitch because of the invasion, and you just went, don't give a fuck. That kind of sold me on it. And but I quite like listening to other fans' points of view on Hibs. And I've mentioned it on here before, because take Porteous, for example. Everyone thinks the sunshine's out his arse and he can't do anything wrong, and he's always got to get sent off every time he puts a tackle. And I quite like listening to what somebody that doesn't support Hibs thinks about that. And it's like, was it a red card or was it no? We'll all say, no, it definitely wasn't a red card. But take the one at Ibrox, like we were on here that night or the day after saying, fucking definitely wasn't a red card, blah, blah, blah. Everybody else said it was. Like, it was just us that, or not just us, but just Hibs fans that said it wasn't. Yeah, so I think it's quite interesting to listen and take the other point of view. But other folk get annoyed with that, don't they? They don't want to hear. It's like Twitter, the way folk will follow the folk they want to hear. You know, so they've got the echo chamber.
How do you feel about it, John?
Feel about what?
Listen to the fans talk about listen to us, mate. They just join in when you're ready.
I'm going to be honest, I think I've maybe watched one episode of The Terrace, and I didn't even realise it was a podcast, to be perfectly honest. But that's not a reflection on what the guys are doing. It's just my own ignorance and genuinely not having a TV aerial in the house. So I can't get terrestrial telly. So unless The Terrace gets to sell it on Netflix, then it's unlikely that I'm going to watch it.
Because you pay a licence, because you're not paying your TV licence, you're not confirming or denying that you've ever seen The Terrace.
You need to get who's listening, John. I'm definitely one of those folk calling it. I like to hear what Hibs fan, because I never believe the other folk. I always just think they're having a go, because I'm like, in my head I'm 12, and that's like, it's hard to understand that folk might be objective. And
that's probably about 80% of supporters though that genuinely are having a pop. There are very few supporters of each team that are prepared to have a conversation about just football, like putting allegiances to one side.
I think I find it hard. See, you talk about Hearts. I could do this. See, if you were to put me on, like, I'm all right talking about Hibs. I could do it. There's probably, if you ask me about Dundee or whatever, I could probably get through a bit of analysis without feeling I needed to take the piss out of them, unless Charlie Adam was playing, and then I might feel that I still had to do it. But I think if I could legitimately get through something talking about Hearts without even just slipping a dig in that maybe only
Just
me and
be
a couple
snidey
other
as,
folk would
aye.
care about.
And what's wrong with that? I think that I don't mind. I don't feel like I don't have a problem with like when I sit with Joel and he takes a little dig at Hibs in a different way, because that's part of the fun of why we watch football, like them and taking the jibes at each other. I mean,
True.
I don't have to be so like I'm not that precious about it all. It's just my football team. Hearts go through absolute joke periods and do joke things that you can always and I can't wait to snipe it. But we try to do the podcast as there's room for both, because obviously it is still fans. We've got, and to be fair, I mean, I can't just say it's just fans, because I mean we've got quite a few journalists and we've got people who actually work at football clubs that are part of it. So we try to mix it up, but it is always going to be a fan side, and I don't mind it too much. I don't get too frustrated. I can just wipe it off if I just think someone's talking shite. And if you're going to have a dig, then fine, because I'll just have a dig back. But as I said, there's so much content with stuff like that. You can also pick and choose what you want to listen to. You don't have to like go for absolutely everything. You don't have to watch absolutely everything. It's you can just wait and see till when someone like myself was on. Then you could listen if you wanted.
That's
to.
generally what I do.
Well, yeah, and that's because like Duncan Mackay, who's the guy who does some of the Duncan and Duncan features on the TV show. I sit with him at Easter Road. That we're seeing tickets there. So I mean, there's sort of more Hibs fans. There's more Hearts fans than anyone, but there's actually the next up. There's two Hibs fans on the podcast as well. So we're certainly represented. But Hibs are a club that we're a big club. You need to remember that as well. That means that everyone wants to take a pop at you, and it's just like we all want to take a pop at the Old Firm. So any team outside of the Old Firm, Hibs are ripe for taking a pop to as well, because we also like to sort of pish ourselves on telly quite frequently at Hampden, which is obviously a big problem. We have our most embarrassing moments sort of aired to the entire world. We can't just do it quietly in the fourth round or something like that when nobody cares. So like we become an easy team to take a pop at, but it's whether you want to listen to that at times, and that is totally reasonable if you just want to stick with the sort of the Hibs pod. I mean, there's podcasts all over the place for each club, and it can be quite interesting. But like I said, I'm not going to tell people that they're wrong or anything like that, because it's about personal preference on what you prefer to sort of spend your time listening to.
The point about the Old Firm as well, because that's one of my things I really like about the Terrace is it's a break from media coverage. It's just focused on two clubs. It's like it's almost they get, I don't know if they get less, but they just don't get the
Just
focus.
equal.
You know, you watch, it's equal. That's the thing. You put on BT Sport or Sky Sports or I mean Premier's like laughably bad for it. You know, remember they did the adverts for the. It was Premier that did it. It was like Celtic versus Hibs, and we let right in. So to get that kind of balance is good as well, because you feel you're actually getting represented.
If Celtic Rangers is 0-0, it's last on the Terrace on a Monday, because it's a 0-0 game goes last, doesn't it? That's the rule. So it's like it's not treated any like, whereas BBC would have that right up top still for the first half hour,
40 minutes,
even though it was 0-0. Yeah.
We still we still get, like, I mean, I've had Stevie Dinn from Glasgow's Green and Adam from Heart and Hand. They've all been involved in the Terrace numerous times, so it's not like we're against the Old Firm or anything like that. We certainly like to take a pop at them, and we are designed specifically to not to treat it equal. That is a deliberate thing. I'm not going to lie; it's clearly deliberate. Yeah. But we take in, because we know at all times we try to make sure that there is podcast and content where every club is represented by actual people who watch them as well. Not every week, but there's always time dedicated to that. And we request people to come on, and they're kind enough to do it, thankfully.
When can you guys take over representing the sports scene? Because it sounds like you put more effort in and you get more representation for around the country than the pundits that are paid probably far more than you guys are.
Guys, I mean, sports sound and stuff. I'm going to have to watch myself now that I do actually do a bit of work for the BBC. But I mean, it's been the same people for a long time, and eventually there is going to have to be a sort of pass at the baton at some point, whether it's to guys like Fowler or Joel or whoever. I mean, I'm not going to speculate about that, but it is going to have to happen. People have to retire at some point, and these guys, the longevity some of them have got at Sports Sound is quite something.
Well, they've already started bleeding in Mark Haitley for the next generation.
The next generation.
He started making appearances, so you may have a while to wait. Right, well, we talk about the game on Saturday, or yesterday, as other folk would call it, depends when you listen to this. Saturday, Hibs drew Aberdeen 1 each. Well, Colin, I'll come to you first. What was your take on the game?
I'm still not sure why I went. It was just dull. But then it was funny because you were kind of going to the game expect this is going to be shite. So you were already in that mindset, this is going to be shite. And then we're sitting there at half time, boys in front were like, there's not been a shot on goal on either end. You're like, oh, there was that Porteous one. Again, it was just dull. There was nothing happened. It was just boring. Nobody was playing for anything. But, although they should be, because they're technically playing for their career. Like the boys, that there's some of them out of contract, some of them, even though they've got a contract, may get paid up. So it was just boring. I don't know.
That's
difficult to add. I know exactly what you mean.
Aye. What were you, Tony? How did you see it?
It was the same. I mean, it's you're going or you're watching the game like what Colin said there. You've already got a preconception of how it's going to be, and the game lived up to that preconception like almost instantly. Just the lack of tempo in the game was frightening from both teams. I mean, Aberdeen sort of created the best chance. I mean, one of the most exciting things was we got a free kick inside the box. You're like, oh, that's like a box ticking. Wow, I've got to witness it. and the inevitable happens that it doesn't go in.
See that, Tony? See that, right? You might know, right? You know more about like the football stuff and that. So we won. It was on the goal line, right? And they brought it back to the 6-yard line, which is always going to get blocked. Why did we not take it back 10? To get more room.
I'm pretty sure, Colin. I'm not an absolute expert. I mean, Craig Anderson, who does the Terrace, he's like a former referee and he's really great for all this stuff. But I think we're allowed to. I think you're right, is that we would be allowed to take it further back if we want to, as long as it stays within the box.
Still have to have been on the goal line, right? So you've got another 4 yards on it. And it's just like, you're never scoring for there. Like, there's always going to be... I think I've only seen one goal for that. It was Shearer, I think. Bang one in the top corner once. And that's it. In like 30 years of that rule.
You need to have a cute sort of say, at that point, you should probably have something in your back pocket that you use for that one time you get that opportunity. And I don't think just rolling off and hitting it is the way to go. I think you'd always have to have a third guy that you would use as a decoy. And then, I don't know.
Yeah. I'd love to see that applied at east of the road, like in case of emergency, break glass and it's like spider web. Blow off it.
Worry about it 2030 the next time we get one. Yeah.
They should just smash it and try and get a deflection. Like an indirect free kick, that would still count as a goal if it hit off somebody and went in, wouldn't it?
Aye.
So I think why they feel that they have to tee it up, because that lets everybody break out as well. I would just smash it and hope it hit off somebody and went in. That would be
because it is going to hit somebody for that, always, because they just pile out. Or just try and tap it underneath their feet, because they're all diving out, giving it like the goalie stuff. It's just like, just roll it, see what happens.
We had a nice wee corner just after that. That was, I mean, this is when you were scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but there was an actual set piece that clearly looked like we work on it that led to a Joe Neal shot. And that was nice to see that maybe that's something we'd actually pre-planned before the game.
The short corner, wasn't it?
Aye.
As soon as he played it, like literally as the ball left, I think it was Ewan Henderson took it. As the ball left his foot, the boy behind me went, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So it turned out all right. Like that's kind of the type of game it was, and the type of atmosphere we had. John, did you think anything different about the game?
Nah, not really. First half I think we were having a laugh last week after he deleted a lot of the files. Like if we could have pulled any of them out of the archives, then we probably could have used that chat because it was much the same. Second half, obviously, like it was poor defending for the goal, but it was a good goal for Hibs to equalise. And I think that's about the size of it.
See, if you look at the Aberdeen goal, right? What did you make of that? So that came from a free kick. It was Harry Clark was trying to clear the ball. I'm not sure who it was that he ended up kicking instead. But they seemed to care what was going on for a wee bit. Tony, what was your take on it at the time?
It looked like he gave a free kick to Hibs, which, don't get me wrong, like even someone with the most green spectacles on would know that definitely was not a free kick to Hibs. He tried to sort of karate kick it away, and he got to about head height. And then it must have been the linesman who got in Bobby Madden's ear to explain that was the wrong decision and to give a free kick. And then sort of the confusion that ensues from that is always a good laugh when no one has a clue what's going on. With VAR coming in next year, we've got loads of that to enjoy as match-going supporters. And then we just didn't defend a second ball. It's always that losing it from like a set piece, but it's always that second phase, as they call it, which is always a problem. And it's just lumped to the back stick. And Gallagher does pretty well. And to be fair to Bates, it's a decent touch and a decent finish, but he almost scored again a few minutes later on from a header, and it's just frustrating because it was basically the same thing happening again.
Folk around me were shouting at Macy about that.
I was going to ask you about that, Colin. What did you think? Now you've seen it back.
Aye. So I've had to see it back because it was one of them, right? I texted him at the time to say, what happened there? Because we were just having a blather or something, and looked up and went, oh, fuck, and saw the boy scoring it, but I paid no attention to it. Or I think we were sitting going, if it's a free kick, how's it not a penalty? Because we thought it was in the box.
Miles in the box, didn't it?
But everybody was shouting at Macy, but I'm not sure. I always sound like I'm trying to defend the boy, and I'm no, right? I don't care.
You are the Matt Macy fan club, eh? Founder and president.
I don't care. Like, when we get on to the next bit, when we're saying who we're firing and that, he'll probably be on the list. But it's like, I didn't see what he could have done because it was the defenders. But at least we got the poacher stamp the feet moment again, eh? He's had to be temper tantrum one he does, because it's everybody else's fault. He does, but it was just because there was about 4 defenders and 2 of them, and yet they still got the header, the touch, and banged it in. And you think we've got many of them here. How are they getting every touch? But I don't think the keeper could have came for it.
How did you feel when I was interested when you saw that Josh Campbell was in the front 3 guys? What was your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of expected. Do you know, it's like we've had that sort of season, haven't we? Like you would see my shoulders disappearing, that was weird. It happened here as well, wasn't it? Just Zoom. But then it's like Back to the Future again. It's a sort of season where if Josh Campbell had been put up front on his own, it wouldn't have been a surprise because like Maloney tend to pick players out of hat for picking the team. Jack Ross, look at what he was doing by the end of his time, and then David Gray's just kind of picked up the baton, hasn't he? Like as Maloney has gone. So,
but you're looking at the bench and going, like, I mean, well, we
Jasper. Why would you not put Jasper in there?
I would have even played Stevenson in the midfield because he's the only one in the last month or 2 that's actually went forward for midfield. Like he was in the semi-final, he was trying to get forward into the box as well as getting back, but then. They're sticking with Campbell, aren't they? Like they've given the big 3-4 year extension or whatever it was he signed earlier in the season. Yeah. So I don't know if they're just persisting, but I feel a bit sorry for him because he's one of those boys. He's got if he's going to still be here for that period of time, he's got such a long way to win everybody back. Like, you know, it's like I say everybody. There's a lot of boo boys, the noisy guys that shout all the time. He's got such a long way to win them back if he can ever do it. It's almost like it's too far gone. Macy's in the similar boat. You know, it's like they can't win whatever they do. So.
What position is he though? Like, Tony, what do you think about Josh Campbell?
I'm really not a fan. I'll go on record as saying that. And anyone who's listened to the Terrace, so I'll know that he lacks anyone near the confidence to play at this level. He really plays within himself all the time. He never wants to take any risks. So when the ball's passed to him, I don't know if this is coached when Ross was there or when Maloney was there, but he almost seems to always want to give it straight back to the centre half, and that's really not a good sign. He never wants to play on the half turn to open up the game and sort of give himself options. It's like he wants the ball away from himself as soon as possible. And you see him at his best when he's not got the ball because there's no pressure on him when he's got the ball. So when he goes chasing harrying, so his best games have been when we've played the Old Firm, for example, where pressing and harrying become sort of like really, really big attributes for the team to use. So he's sort of coming to his own at that. But the majority of the time, we see a lot of the ball. So to have a centre midfielder who isn't really willing to turn with it and open it up, that's a severe problem, and that's coaching. And as I said, I don't really know if it's if there's a lack of talent, because when he was at Edinburgh City, I know a bit for sort of following and hearing a bit, like he liked a shot, for example. He used to hit a lot of shots for far out, and he's not done that at all, which is a shame, because this team has really lacked anyone being willing to take a dig. And that could have been something that would have gave Josh Campbell a bit of credit in the bank that the fans may have appreciated because no one else was doing it. But he seems either frightened or being told that not to do it.
Yeah, there was one obvious one yesterday. It was in front. I sit in the waist upper near the away end, and there was a ball come down, and Clark ran past them, and all he needed to do was touch it into Clark's path, and he went back into Doyle Hayes or somebody, and everybody just went, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" All at once, all around the stadium, and it was such an easy. It wasn't even a difficult pass. He wasn't trying to beat anybody, and it was just his automatic reaction was, "Ball's coming to me, it's going back that way." When the easy ball was actually fucking 5 yards to the left or to the right. Sorry,
a few of them, not just for Josh Campbell, but like Joe Newell caught one for his shot. You know, he kind of delayed a shot, and then it got blocked, and you just like kind of collectively have done the same thing. And they're like, for fuck's sake. And John, what did you think of the atmosphere in general yesterday? I
must admit, I wasn't there. I'm not even going to pretend that I was. I was in the house watching on the TV, not because of Hibs' performances or inability to get a shot on target last week, just because I had other things taking up my time.
Based on what you've heard so far, what do you think the atmosphere is like?
Well, based on what Colin was saying in that, like, it probably sounded a bit dull, a bit flat. So I was taking on what you were saying there about Josh Campbell, and I think one of the things that's inhibited his progress this year is Hibs being so fucking shit. Hibs being so burst by injuries that he's had to fulfill a number of positions. So Tony was saying that when he was at Edinburgh City, he was getting forward a bit more. You said he was known for taking a few cracks at goal. He's probably not had that opportunity this year because of the roles that he's been asked to play. So I'd like to see him in a Hibs team that does well, so that it doesn't just become who the Boo Boys are targeting that day, because there isn't one Boo Boy or the target for the Boo Boys in the Hibs team now. It's just there's several of them, and everyone's getting it tight. And it's kind of hard to be objective about someone's abilities, progress, and potential in that atmosphere.
Well, I mean, how toxic it got. I mean, for what? Again, I said I wasn't there. I was hanging at Mars after a wedding, so I watched it on the telly as well. I couldn't face it. But Kev, I mean, I read that about James Scott being a lot of, in terms of going beyond it being dull and a bit flat. It was almost pretty toxic with some cunt basically trying to have a square goal with James Scott.
We'll come on to that, because that's one of our talking points.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
I know, it's all right. We'll cover it because we know the person involved. We'll talk about that when it comes up onto the talking points. But before we get to that, the Hibs goal, and we'll cover off the Hibs goal, and then we'll go on to the talking points, Colin, and you can take us through them. Tony, what did you think of the Hibs goal?
Well, you see with Jasper coming on, the last 20 minutes felt a bit good from a Hibs perspective, because it was easy for that game to just accept the 1-0 defeat, and it was good. One thing I'll say for the players is they really didn't let that happen. So Paul McGinn was really driving forward and sort of dovetailing all right with Harry Clark, and there was a bit of aggression in that. And then obviously Jasper coming on, who sort of brought some ability to sort of beat a man. And I'm not Jasper's sort of biggest fan or anything like that. I think there is a little bit of, because we're so shit and bland, that what he's shown some tricks at the start elevated him in the eyes of myself, even, because I spoke quite highly of him when he first came. But at the same time, we're a team that lacks so much that a guy who's capable of going round someone kind of has to be on the pitch. I don't think we're not in a position to sort of like try and get too clever around certain types of players. A guy who's quick, who's tricky, and get past a man and put a cross in. We kind of need him, and you saw that, because it wasn't just the goal he created when he got a great sort of step over, got past the man, deep cross, headed back, and a good finish. But he also he done the same that nearly led to Doig's goal, that would have got us the 3 points there. So, I mean, I was pleased about the last 20 minutes, because the team sort of showed something, a bit of care, which is all we're looking for right now.
And Aberdeen, just to be word on them, they spent a lot of time on their backs. Like, I think it's been a while since I've seen a team spend so long on the ground. I think the referee was a wee bit conservative with his 6 minutes injury time. Colin, what did you make of Aberdeen's approach to the game?
It just feels like something that happens now all the time. We're maybe the only team that don't do it. It was happening in the semi-final as well. And like I've been watching a bit more of the European football recently because my daughter's wanting to watch all the Champions League and that during the week, and it happens all the time in the games. It happens in the Premier League in England. It's as soon as somebody goes near somebody, they just crumple to the ground and lie there, and it's fucking dull. And I think we're the only team that don't do it. Like, or it feels like that. Yeah, every team we play against are doing it. So it's just like somebody needs to clamp down on it, the refs or something. Just fucking roll them off, play round them, change the rules, play round them. Like, it's just boring.
The boy McCrory took a sore one the way right in the.
Aye,
right
can't
in
get
the-
that one. Aye, okay.
You see, he was like arguing about going off, and he looked like him with a boxers, like trying to get the referee not to count them out at the end. They can't quite stand upright. He looked like
Tam
that.
McManus, apparently Tam McManus on the TV commentary. John, you might, well, you both of you might know. He was just sort of laughing and saying, "Well, he took a couple of dives earlier on, almost so he fucking deserves it."
Have the concussion, you prick.
Something on the lines of he doesn't know if it's what was it? He doesn't know if it's Shrove Tuesday or Sheffield Wednesday.
The classics.
Right, Colin, what have we got by way of talking points, and we'll wrap up on the Aberdeen game.
Right. So there's a few sections there. Negativity, the manager, the game, and then the usual miscellaneous drivel. So, what do you want to start with? Negativity, manager,
Miscellaneous.
game. Oh, do you want to start with the drivel?
Nah,
Right.
go with negativity then.
Right, negativity, right. So just
Talk
read them
through
out and then we could talk about them. So Jeff Ashton, Lucy Van Pelt, Cannon Hannon, McGlashan, Fraser Wilson. Do you think the negativity around Easter Road is amplified by the neighbours doing well? Slagging your own players isn't acceptable. That's not supporting the team, it's helping the opposition. And to back that up, what's worse, abusing a player for signing autographs or moaning and groaning every time a player on the park does something wrong? You want to talk about those two first? And then I'll come back to the others.
Aye, so John, go you first, right? So I know, John, you got quite strong opinions on whether or not fans should support or have a moan. So what's worse than having a go at somebody for getting an autograph during the warm up, or moaning like fuck every time somebody puts a pass out of the park or gives the ball away?
The latter, however, the optics of the former, it's like an isolated incident. It kind of like shines a spotlight on that one particular moment where. So, like, I saw a thread on Hibs.net that was talking about the abuse that James Scott had got, and I couldn't quite understand. Like, everyone's got an opinion. Like, football's about opinions, blah blah blah. But within that thread that was talking about James Scott, there were people saying, "Aye, but he shouldn't have been signing autographs for the Bairns anyway." But Hibs are that much of a like a negative, toxic atmosphere about it now. It's like the players can't do right for doing wrong. So if they weren't going to go and give the Bairns like a couple of minutes of time and sign an autograph or take a selfie or whatever, the criticism would have been they're aloof, they're above it, they should actually be engaging with the fans more. But then they've done it and they've been singled out by someone in the crowd. Like, what do you do with that? And on the point of giving players a hard time when they misplace a pass or put something over the bar. So I'd mentioned to someone yesterday when they said that Joe Newell had an awful miss, for the one that he was about he was maybe about 7 yards out, and Joe Lewis came and smothered it and had a really good save. Understand the boys frustrated that Joe Newell didn't score, but that's no reason to lash out. Like, you can be disappointed, you can be upset, but as soon as that turns into like, oh fuck you, you're fucking awful. That's beyond me. Because I've said before, like, I think the worst criticism that most of us can ever give in the stand about a player's performance or a player's ability or their missed shot is that was shite. Try and do better next time. And I know I've said as well, like, that's probably a minority one opinion, but the effort that professionals have to go through, like the demands that are placed upon them physically, mentally, etc., they are also still humans as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of need to cut them a wee bit of slack rather than putting them on this pedestal, and we're ready to cut that pedestal out from under them as soon as that mistake happens.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about it, Tony?
I agree a lot with what's said there. I think there's it's always an issue of time after time, and the frustration builds over the course of a season. So when there's if you're losing one game and you in the midst of 4 or 5 when you've been playing well, then you will get that slack a lot more that we're talking about, and that's great. And in an ideal world, that is exactly how a football fan should behave. But just like we're saying that the players are human, the fans are human, and some of them are angry cunts. And
Yeah.
but
But then the angry cunt in the stand, the bit that I didn't quite understand is like, when have they ever lifted their performance, or when have you got something more out of them, or when have they ever been in that situation where someone's been screaming abuse at them, and they've went, Ken, what? Like, you're fucking right. Like, I should put that in. I'll do better because you're screaming at me.
Yeah, I'm a scumbag. I'll do it now. No, you're totally right. It's a really difficult. It's always a difficult one. It's been one that's been around for since football would have started in terms of how people abuse. But people get. I find that when someone's just I understand that when it's just like an outpouring of frustration at one moment, especially when it's maybe like 85 minutes and you've been really struggling and you've been huffing and puffing, but it's not really like that a lot of time at Easter Road. There's guys that are singled out constantly, regardless of what they do, and there's no support that comes when they do something good. That's just ignored, and it's totally focused on every time that there's an opportunity. I feel like people look for opportunities to have a goal.
We've mentioned that before, and 100% what happens.
So, I mean, but I said it's always tough because people are going there, and as I said, it's an accumulation of very, very frustration. We've just come off the back recently of losing 2 games in a week against Hearts to go in the semi-final, so it's pretty fever pitch. People are angry about things that are going off the pitch. There's a lot of conjecture about that. So there is a huge amount of frustration around the club, and some of it is correct. But I do agree in these isolated instances, they don't help. It's just there's no way it is going to help the player being screamed at. So
no,
but I can still understand how it comes around from time to time.
You know what's funny is it used to be the shouts as well. Like I mean, back in the day when you first started going to the football, when folks shouted at a player that had a certain amount of humour to it, now it's just fucking angry.
So we need more creative abuse at Easter Road.
Like, if you're going to do it,
probably agree on that.
Be creative. That's where we're going with this. At least give everybody else a wee fucking laugh. Colin, was there anything else about the James Scott incident on those points?
No, really. I mean, there was a few folk mentioned that, but that was it summed up there. Like, like about is it worse? I don't think it's any worse. It's just the same. It's the same as it just looks different, doesn't it? And it was just a bit,
So just before we move on, because like I say, we know the person that was involved with that, and they've been in touch today to say that they've written to the club and they're going to contact the club tomorrow to pass on apologies and specifically apologies to James Scott, saying they very much regret the incident, and probably in the cold light of day they realise it wasn't the right thing to do. So it's probably fair to say that for everybody that's calling them out, they have taken steps to try and put that right.
We did talk about it recently how there's a lack of, I think the club and the fans, there's maybe been like a bit of a separation. We're kind of at odds with each other now. And I do think on the back of that incident that there's a really good opportunity for some positive PR. And that's to have the culprit tied to the goalposts and have James Scott hit arse blasters at him.
Yes.
I think that's going to get folk back on side.
Short bangers. Exactly.
Because he'll not hit him anyway, will he? So, so the risk.
You'll need a 5, wouldn't you?
I'm glad he's reached out. I think that's good because it's a bit different than having a go at someone on the park for their ability. They're talking about his behaviour as a person almost when he's at the side of the pitch and he's not actually playing. You'd feel quite. I think he would have felt a bit frightened at that point. I'm guessing. Yeah. I don't know the incident, but when you're not on the pitch and you're being screamed at by someone coming down, you would feel like it'd be quite an intense moment. So I'm glad the guy's been willing to sort of reach out and hope that, and obviously, I hope that the club and James Scott and everyone can just sort of maybe put it to bed because it's not a nice thing to have hanging over anyone at the club. Stuff like that.
Absolutely. What's next up, Colin?
I think just go back on one of them. I think there was a big point missed there. I think it was Jeff that said that is the negativity amplified because how well the neighbours are doing. I think there's a point in there as well. Like it is shite, but because they're third in the cup final, it makes everybody feel even worse, doesn't it?
I think it's worse because it's been shite for so long. I kind of like the Hearts thing comes into it, but like, see on Saturday when I was moaning, I wasn't thinking about what Hearts are doing. I was just thinking, I just want to fucking see us score a goal or have a shot on target, like
I know,
put an attack and move together. That would be nice.
It's in the back of your mind. It is. If they were in the bottom six alongside us, or just sixth and not in the cup final, and that folk wouldn't feel as bad. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, because I think people maybe start to feel worried about. Obviously, this season was so important in terms of the riches that were involved and the sort of the movement that you can make as a club by finishing third in the cup due to the sort of guaranteed group football. So I think that worries people in the pit of your stomach a bit. It's like, oh, we missed an opportunity there. And of course, if we miss the opportunity, who's the worst team to fucking get the opportunity?
I'm not that
hard.
bothered about how far Hearts fans think that they're going to get with this embarrassment of riches that they're going to come into, because I remember a time when they spent about 12 grand a week on Gordon Petrich, so fuck them.
The SMG money.
I'm taking the positive out of it. They'll be next season. Now this is a quick clip, but next season they'll be shite next season, because they're playing Thursday, Sunday, till December or whenever it is. They're not going to have the squad. They're going to be hanging on to the last minute, hoping that Sims will sign for them, and he's not going to sign for them because he'll go back to Everton in the Championship or to another Championship team. They'll end up signing some shite. They'll not get enough bodies, and they'll have loads of injuries and suspensions, and we'll be above them in the league before you know it. And then
here we go.
They'll be saying, "Give me a transfer committee. I want a transfer committee. This boy Savage is a fucking clown."
So that was a thing that I saw the other day. There was about the amount of money that I think it's for every pound that Hearts spend on wages, Celtic are spending roughly £7. And the difference between, I think, Celtic and Hearts and their spending is greater than the difference between Celtic and someone like Liverpool.
Yep, that's right.
And I think that's the gap that Hearts would need to make up, like you're saying, Colin, in terms of being able to invest in a squad that's able to battle on all fronts domestically.
Yeah, they're in the same boat we were last season, when we were in the exact same position they are right now.
Investment.
All right, what's next?
I'll finish these ones off, so they're just a few points. I was there supporting my team. Like it or not, it's what you do. Main complaint was it was freezing in the East Nuke. As the players have by and large given up, so have I. I went out and played on my motorcycle. Why don't we just bring back Rod Petrie and all go for a beer and forget this American nightmare happened? That was just the last.
Like an episode of Dallas. Just come out of the shower.
Just wake up in the shower with Rod Petrie.
Everyone will be queuing up to shampoo his moustache.
It's a challenging wank, isn't
it? So there's a few on the manager. So Vince Robinson, Ryan Lyle, the Edinburgh Golf Podcast, and Chris Lee. One striker at home against a poor Aberdeen. Are we being readied for Miscellaneous? Bring in the new manager and back him. He'll need to be heavily backed, and they can't be seen to be not investing in the first team. Bring in experience over project players this time. Starting to think that maybe Sir David Gray's team selection was picking the team, when Maloney was in charge. He stood today looking not interested. And finally, Keane, beard or no beard? So, Miscellaneous, what do you think about that? Because there's a few rumours coming to hospitality yesterday. I've heard it from one in one of the group chats and one separate to that. Somebody in the corporate yesterday was saying that McInnes is coming in this week. Thursday, possibly. I heard from all that.
He was there, eh?
I think it was.
I didn't see him. I was trying to look out for him, but
is it the old posh seats in the west? Apparently,
I just sit to the left of them, and so can normally see who's kicking about, but I never noticed them.
There wasn't anything like glowing radioactively emanating for the posh seats.
Nah, and he has that sort of that colour about him, but then I suppose if Ben Kensel was up there as well with the colour he is, maybe they just cancelled each other out.
They got the attention away from him.
It's sort of like a floodlight would come on.
They probably bumped into each other at the sunbeds, and that's why he didn't like.
That's where they had the interview.
Some of the in the know chat is it's 100% not McInnes, and then you've got 100% it is. So
yeah.
Classic.
I think we're just getting fed stuff, eh? Like, just go get out in public domain and we'll all be looking elsewhere and somebody else will slide in.
Sometimes I do think that I do think that the clubs, not just Hibs, I just think in general, I almost think they feed things out there to sort of gauge the opinion. I do really think that clubs do absolutely do that. And it wouldn't surprise me if Hibs behave like that right now, especially when we've chopped and changed manager there twice. And obviously, we've got guys involved that aren't well versed, and this isn't a criticism, please. This is not what I'm trying to say. They're sort of still building into what kind of club Hibs are and sort of Scottish football in general. So they're no entirely, they'll not be super sure of themselves. And I mean, Ron even admitted that himself in the interviews he's done with you guys and when he was picking Maloney. So I wouldn't be surprised if things are being drip fed out in a way of gauging sort of fan opinion on stuff. Whether you like that or not is up for debate, but I do think that I could believe that could happen.
How do you feel about McInnes if that was who we went for?
Might as well just stick him with Ross. It's almost like having the exact same manager.
I had that exact conversation at half time on Saturday. But boy,
I think if McInnes was to get appointed, he would need to be successful immediately from like goal within the first 5 minutes sort of territory, because otherwise you would fall into what Colin had said before about not this episode, the previous episode. McInnes is all right, provided you're winning. Ross was all right, provided you were winning. In fact, even when Ross was winning, it wasn't quite all right because with folk that were quite ready to, like, they'd been sharpening the knives for him for a while. McInnes isn't going to get time if Hibs were to appoint him to build anything. It would just be boring. It would be shit. It would be like Jack Ross at his worst. So Hibs, Ron, Ian, Ben, if you're listening, do not appoint Derek McInnes.
And Roy Keane's beard, what we're saying about that. But somebody messaged me and said that he wasn't out of the running. Absolutely isn't out of the running, despite what's been said. But
despite being told and not being also being told. So he's not out there running, but also we've been told
he was never in the running.
100% was never in the running. Hibs never even contacted him. It was him that's been doing the running. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it was always the idea was always that he was more into Hibs than Hibs. But that's what the sort of the vibe I'd been hearing. And if he's not happy with sort of management committees and like that, well, he's not going to get a job pretty much anywhere. Like whether we believe that our committee's good, made up of good people, is perfectly reasonable debate. But the makeup of having a committee for transfers is perfectly normal. I
quite like the idea that Hibs have had an expression of interest for Roy Keane himself or for his representatives or whatever, and went, fuck, we're not phoning that boy back. Because I think there's a lot of folk out there that are maybe overawed by the Roy Keane persona, the history behind the guy as a player, and overlooking his no credentials, but his achievements as a manager. But I just don't think that he'd be a good fit for Hibs manager.
Yeah, I said that last week, didn't I? I think that I was hoping that these guys going out doing the interviews aren't like starstruck by people like that and think, fuck, it's Roy Keane off the telly. You know, like. But anyway, beard. I'm going beard on the answer.
I've beard as well. Definitely looks angrier with the beard.
Aye. But the big bushy one that he does.
The proper like the twits.
Aye.
Bits of breakfast feast names in his beard.
Saliva face spitting his anger out. Right, the game. So Dave Graham, Brunswick, Bill, Gaz, St Christopher, Stuart, Tony Lally, Gaz, John Watt, Mike, Stephen, Scott all said, well, they never all said this. They all said one of these each. Paul Hanlon was Captain Fantastic again. Now, I think Dave's taking a wee bit there. But it was Dave. But, I mean, he did his 500 appearances, so that's obviously a fair good milestone and all that for the guy. Other stats for the number of back passes made, because we must top that league. In their favour, the back pass success rate was way ahead of forward pass success rate. Thought Ryan Porteous made a double-handed save in the first half, which means straight red and a ban again, obviously. First 70 minutes were rubbish, enjoyed the last 20. Loads of panto villains to shout at, attempts at goal. Jasper, a goal. Hanlon wrongly announced as a scorer. His kid's pal became a Hibs fan at this first game, and he bought him his first strip because it was 50% off. I don't know if that's why he bought him it, but it was 50% off. It's about time the clock stops when the ball's not in play to stop all the injuries, in inverted commas. New manager, same old Aberdeen. Man of the match was the Aberdeen physio. What an engine. Worst game I've had in a long time. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. Worst game I've watched in a long time. Absolutely brutal. Aberdeen players an embarrassment. Feigning injury every time a Hibs player went near them. Number 10 dive in. Madden was as usual in itself. Why did it take until the 80th minute? Excuse me, for the players to start looking as if they were up for it. And finally, dreadful match, eye bleeding, negative midfield, no width. Melkerson, no chance to gain confidence with zero service. Major work to be done, but you already know that. I don't know if there's any there you want to pick out, but the physio did do probably if he had one of those wee vests on, he must have easy cup or 10k.
Was it maybe
would
like
be
Chris?
spectacular.
Is it Chris Cadden in like a Scooby Doo mask running a bit?
Was it Porteous with the double-handed save? I thought it was Hanlon. But
Yeah.
aye.
Did you see the highlights on the sports scene? I'm still not convinced that. Because folk were adamant it was a penalty, having watched it in real time.
He's behind him, eh?
Fuck, could you tell that was a penalty watching that at the game? Even watching the highlights, I was like, I still don't care if that should have been a penalty or not.
I think
I'm going to say no, obviously, because I'm biased, but
a wee word on Hanlon. I mean, obviously, I think he's been pretty poor since he came back from injury. I think that's pretty much every game. But I think he was slowly getting much. He was much better yesterday. He stood up a lot better in against their strikers. So that was nice to see because we've got a lot to worry about in that position. If Porteous in the last year of his dealing most likely will get sold. If he's not saying a new one, I'm going to guess he's going to get sold. Rocky Bashiri's only on loan, and as I mean, he's got his own doubters, and he's a very young centre half himself. So we might, whether we like it or not, need Hanlon next season at least as a squad player. So we need them to get back. But I'll let you talk about other things. I'm actually getting some stats about the passing back and forward of Light Scout. I thought
that's why we asked John.
I was gonna. I can only get it for the next 4 games. But you talk about something else, and I'll get it ready.
Right, okay. Talk about Highlands quickly because that 500 appearances, and he has got his doubters. Right, we've said it before, right? So one of the common criticisms that comes up about Hanlon is he's never his bottom. Like he's never had anybody come in for him, and like if he stayed at Hibs, so he can't be that good because nobody's looking at him. But I think folk underestimate how difficult it is to play 500 games at Hibs. Like you look at how many players come and go because they've no cut it, and there's no reason for manager after manager after manager to stay loyal to somebody just because they're a nice guy. Because ultimately the manager's job depends on it. Like they're not going to play somebody just because they're kind of been around for a wee while. So I would say it's like some achievement, and I think Hanlon could have moved a few times. He used to work beside his mum, and I mind they had the chance to move to Fulham. I mind who was back in charge, but it was when Fulham were doing well, and that move was getting Aberdeen were after him at one point. So it's not like he's not had offers over the time that he's been in.
I mean, I think was it Aberdeen Retro posted earlier, didn't they, or tweeted earlier that we've got two current players in the top 5 all-time appearances we've got there, isn't it? We always talk about matching experience with youth and all that. Like we're kind of at the top end of the experience here with the two boys. There's only 3 other players that have played more times than them, sort of thing in history of Hibs. What do you think about the time? Like a game, so we play 45 minutes, and then we're all guessing, right? It'll be 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever injury time. Do you think you could? Was there no talk of doing like
60 minutes,
a clock, like an American football style thing? Do you know, like you play 30-minute halves, but the ball every time the ball goes out to play, you stop. Do you think there's any merit in that, or do you think that's just too radical?
Definitely, there's definitely merit in addressing the timing structure of football, because as you say, like players go down and the clock continues to run, so the team that's ahead can just time waste as much as they want willy-nilly. Just go down with an injury, goalkeepers can piss about at the back, and it's one of those rules, like every player, every football team, every club, every manager, they're always trying to find that wee bit of an advantage somewhere, and that kills so much time, and it's never been addressed. So I was talking about my mate on Saturday. Player goes down, stop the clock. It's the same way, I know this is maybe a wee bit controversial, but it's the same with head knocks. Have that sort of like mandatory, off you go and get checked out by a pitchside doctor for your head knock. Make sure there's no concussion, and that would probably reduce the amount of fake head injuries. Because we've all seen it. There's been plenty of occasions where someone's gone down.
Too many folk are going on with fake heads.
Hunters.
It's true though. I mean, the head knock one, they should be straight off away down the tunnel, get checked out. You're doing to 10 men until he's ready.
Or bring on a concussion sub.
Because
I'll bring on a concussion sub.
We've done it. Like so in the derby, I think it was Porteous and Stevenson both went out and blocked at Easter Road, the 0-0 one at Easter Road back in February, and they both went down, had in their face and all that. When neither of them got hit in the face, the boy done it yesterday when Porteous took the short free kick. It happens regularly. The Aberdeen boy done it yesterday when Doyle kicked that shot He was obviously faking it there as well, right? And all of they ones. And it's just fucking, just get them off the pitch. Just say you can't. That's you. You're 10 minutes till we check you out.
It says
they'll not hit their face.
It's as anti-football as putting up with men behind the ball. Like Jose Mourinho, part of the bus style tactics. Like it's just the complete antithesis of good football because it kills it.
If you're
and Aberdeen are really good at it.
But they'll do it. As I say, I think we're the only ones that don't.
Do you know, it maybe comes back to what you were saying earlier, Colin, about like listening to other fans' opinions, because I must admit, like I'm of that point of view that when the opposition do it, it's just the opposition do it. They always do it against Hibs. They're always doing it against us. And I don't really see Hibs doing it that much. But I think you said as well that we're not especially good at that, the dark art, that side of it. But then you mentioned a couple of examples there, so we definitely do it.
I've done it. Purchase is probably the one that's most likely to do it, but the rest don't.
He buys a lot of fouls, but I don't know how you address that within the rules of the game.
Yeah. I like the idea of stopping the clock though, and if you make it visible as well, because then it's like that thing is so what annoys me when players do it, when it gets into injury time and players do it, that doesn't get added on again.
The subs
Sometimes
come on and all that.
Aye, but they tend to just go, well, we'll say 6 minutes, I think it's to 6 minutes. Never mind that they've wasted 2 of those 6 minutes just banging about.
That would put an end to late substitutions in that as well. I'm sure it.
Aye, and be consistent with the cards is the other thing. Like if you're going to book a player for time waste, and be consistent with it and do it early. As soon as they start doing it, just go fucking, no, that's no one yellow card.
Yeah. And if you're going to stop the game for an injury, Bobby Madden, make sure you do it every week.
Stop the game to let the Aberdeen player back on as well.
Aye, that's right.
Ken, and you're like, when did you see that happening? It never happens when it's fucking us. It's wanting a player back on.
I think he ran on without getting permission, and instead of sending him back off, he just let him come on. I think that's what was happening. Well, we get on the miscellaneous ones.
The miscellaneous ones. Tony's he got disconnected, but he's trying to get back on. So
he's got that Y-Scout. Because he's got that Y-Scout, and his Wi-Fi's probably fucked. Vince Robinson, MG Baroque, Paul McQueenie, TG Willis, Andrew Brown, Jack, and Moonbound. The folk not renewing need to buy that 1980 retro top as a penance. That was a proper turgid year. 2 questions. I subscribe and can't remember where to log in. And what are your thoughts on the new regime? Starting to get paranoid about Gordon and Kensall. Why not play the 18s for the final 2 games? Let the age group below play in their place and then conclude their season after the St Johnstone game. They're going to win the league regardless. What have you got to lose? Desperately needing a good striker. Why not play Lewis Stevenson in the midfield ahead of any of the other 3? Give some youngsters a chance for the last 2, which is quite funny, right? When you're saying play Stevenson ahead of the midfield, but give youngsters a chance. But still, it's on the same sentence. Did the 14,509 crowd enjoy the entertaining and absorbing encounter as described in the Hibs match report? A couple of other ones here. The Seagulls. Are there more of them? And are they bigger than usual? And who would win a mud wrestle between Ron Gordon and Rod Petrie? So that's all the sort of hot topics in the miscellaneous section. I do have another couple of questions there, but that's the any there you want to grab?
The Seagulls were more prevalent on Saturday than have been for some time.
One came right up to us, and I was sort of blank to answer that question. We got in short bangers the other week.
Did you ask it if it blinks?
Did they come up to you and go, fucking boo?
I think you gave me shit in my seat, but like I'd been tanning my seats round about us earlier in the week. But
I think when there's less fans, the Seagulls are more likely to come down, I would say, and they've got more access to the shite left on the flare, which is what they're there for.
Yeah.
I might go to the next game dressed up as a hawk just if I can spook the cunts, just to see how they like it.
I think they are getting bigger though. In general, I'm starting to feel like one day I'm just going to get taken away like a pterodactyl in Jurassic Park. But
the one that came flying in was fucking big. Like, Ian T asks, I think this is a good question. If we'd had our COVID season with fans, so it's an alternate reality here, would we have felt a closer bond with the club and the owner, or at least had more credit in the bank?
Absolutely.
I think he's right. I think he's got a point now.
That's the one we missed. Like we missed that one, and this is the one that we got back in for.
Aye, I know. That's absolutely, it's just Hibs, isn't it? Got somebody here saying, let me know if James Scott needs handers. That's from Amber and Johnny in America.
She's got a long way to go to give her.
And right, here's one for you. Here's one for you, Tony. XG is 46.67 this season. We've scored 32 goals, but the XG against is 38.57 with 38 conceded, which suggests the attacking players aren't keeping up their side of the bargain. What do you think about XG and all that?
I'm no, as I said, despite having Wyscout and that, there's people at our pod that are much more well versed than me in how it all goes. But that would speak to that. I mean, what people's actual opinions on what XG means and what a chance represents is always up for debate, and that's why there's no exact science to it, because it is still someone deciding on what type of chance is better than another, and there's some bits of context that are left out of that, I think, at certain times. But I would say overall, over a season, that would probably be a fair conclusion to come to, and I would also say that's maybe speaks to Matt Macy not really making any sort of match-winning saves as well, unfortunately.
Mm. So would you expect the XG against to be lower than? Is that what you mean?
Well, we can basically, the XG against, we've nearly conceded exactly what the XG is. We nearly conceded exactly, which would say that teams take their chances that they create against us. They create less chances than we create against the whole league. Again, there's context in that about different teams, different period of the season. I mean, it's not an exact science, but over a season that does help. You got, like, when you use these stats, it's also, you need to use your eyes as well. So I mean, when you're watching a game, it's a bit of balance between the two things. When you really want to start sort of using this data, it's to supplement what you see, and maybe also to maybe make you think that sometimes you've got your own biases that don't really stand up, etc. But that, to be fair, that I don't think that XG, I think, would suit with everyone. What they think is that teams, when they create chances against us, take them. And Matt Macy doesn't make particularly many big saves, and also not many huge errors. And then on the flip side, for us going forward, that we're quite wasteful in front of goal.
Yeah,
I mean, a striker's goal tallies tell you all that you need to know for that, really.
Aye. Did you find out that passing stats?
I've got some stuff here. I used the team one for. So it's basically like the last sort of X amount of games. So it would be sort of the last 5 games. So let me get the exact games up. So it would be, I've got a report from when we lost the derby at Tynecastle to the game that we just played against Aberdeen there. And I'll just get to the passing stats. And now we do, I think we do play a lot of back passes, like looking at this. Give me 1 second, though. I've lost my train because I went back up to see what the games were that were set across. But I certainly do. I mean, there's maybe some shocks that you might get about sort of Jake Doyle-Hayes and players like that. But it does, I think it stands up to what people would think. I'll use Doyle-Hayes and Heel because I think they're the ones that people are most going to be wanting to hear about here. So he's played 467 minutes in that period. And his forward passes are 66. And 54 of them are accurate, which is 82%, which might say that he's actually good at passing forward, but again, that he maybe is rather safe. So he'll only do it at times where he really fancies himself, because that was that's quite a high around. Another good one for that is passes to the final third, which is probably better. He's only made 33 in 4 games, which I would say isn't that high. Really, for a player, especially when we play with just 2 central midfielders. I don't think that's high at all. But again, 25 that, so the percentages is quite high. But again, that would speak to me, from what we see with our eyes, is that it's always safe. He'll only make it if he really thinks it's got like a high opportunity to do it. Joe Newell actually plays less forward passes and his accuracy is lower, which might also speak to the fact that he also likes to ball carry a bit more. Joe Newell, he drives a bit more, but at the same time, it's lower, so he might take slightly riskier ones. Joe Newell's back passes are 100%. Whenever he passes backwards, he always makes it right. And Jake Doyle-Hayes is 30 and 25 with back passes. So he does pay double the amount of forward passes than he does back passes. But you've also got the lateral pass, which is what people do. So sideways. And Doyle-Hayes.
Yeah.
So he actually, that's 100 he's made, which is more than anyone else in the team, including the defenders, which I'd say is bad because defenders always pass it along the back. And he's made 100 of them and 98 of them, so 98% of that. So he's played 130 backwards or sideways passes, and he's only played 66 forwards. So it's nearly double the amount sideways
folk
and back.
do count the sideways as a backwards, don't they?
Yeah,
So,
no, and I think it's a fair perception. So I would say those stats back up what people's eyes tell them, and which they'll be pleased to hear, I'm sure, for the he's back. Haters.
They do get in each other's way though, they two. Like watching it yesterday, they could have thrown like a fucking blanket over them. Like, you're like, fucking move apart. Like, you've been playing with the guy all season, the two are standing next to each other. If you've got to pass each other, it's 5 yards. Like, fucking spread out. It's just the two of you in there. So frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Oh,
I was going to say, like, the passing backwards, right? So a lot of that, I think, is due to the slow build-up, like how long we take to get the ball forward when we do get it. Because there were spells that, and especially first half yesterday, Aberdeen had everybody back when we were on the ball. So the only way we could pass it, because there was no forward passes on. So you kind of got the midfield take some responsibility for that. But because there's no movement and no space in front of them, the only option sometimes is to go back or sideways, which is... It's just like the whole system's fucked, isn't it? Like,
absolutely.
The suggestion no being that Hibs, at least under Ross, and it wasn't that long ago that it was sacked, that we were set up to be a counter-attacking team. And we are still that team, and other clubs have got wise to it, so just went, aye, fine. Like, we'll just camp.
Yeah, we're still that team, but we've taken away the key component. We've taken away the key component that made it, which was Martin Boyle. So, I mean, there's been no change. And that was the problem with Maloney from the start. It isn't whether Maloney's right or wrong in his style, but trying to implement that mid-season with no pre-season was always going to be on a hiding at nothing. I feel it was all. If you want to reinvent the wheel, you need to do it in pre-season where there's no eyes on you, and you do it calmly when you've got all the time in the world to implement it, not try and do it on the fly when there's watching eyes and opinions and like you were talking about earlier, the abuse for the stand. It makes it very difficult to implement this, especially what John was saying. When you want to sort of reinvent the wheel, it becomes really tough with watching eyes.
What will the next call? Any other?
There's one question, but it's going to take too long. I thought we could maybe ask Tony about the Biscuit Olympics instead. See what he thinks. Have you heard the Biscuit Olympics question before, Tony?
What about which is the best?
Aye.
Which one can throw the furthest?
Which one?
Oh, right, yeah. I've seen you talking about this on Twitter. I mean, what I can throw. Are you going to give me two options, or do I just have to come up with the one?
You've got to come up with the one you think.
And show your workers.
What are those? Yeah, because you need it to be slightly heavier, eh? Because I was thinking like those mint thins, maybe quite good, but they would maybe get caught in the wind, and they wouldn't be able to go that far. They could end up blowing back on you. Yeah. So I'm thinking a nice bourbon would, I think, would have the right balance between density and heaviness, and the ability for me to absolutely.
But what about the
shape?
shape, though? What about the shape? You think that's got to?
Because it could skim. It'd be like skim, like almost like a stone.
End over end, or
I'm thinking like The Office. I'm going to have my shoe off in a minute, tying my shoelaces, try to throw it over
the pub. Because we were going, various ones, but the mint Viscount is our favourite for a while. And what was the one?
Yeah, because that's like a disc shape, isn't it?
Aye, disc. So we're going disc. Was it a chocolate round or something as well? Maybe I took the photo that day. The sort of Marks and Spencer's Christmas box you get, and that's quite heavy and round.
Maybe not the chocolate round, because that's got the hole in the middle. I think that's going to introduce drag. I think you want one of the ones that's in like the foil wrapper, because you can nail the good biscuits as well, and they've got the same sort of like density. And
but would the foil cause like some kind like?
I mean, you could take the foil off. That's what I was thinking.
Sure, there'd be rules before the Biscuit Olympics about removing of foil. Drugs cheat always put the foil on.
The Biscuit Olympic Committee.
Maybe better than our transfer committee, so get them involved.
Apparently there's no transfer committee now as well. That was another thing this weekend. It was in the paper. They're saying it's not really a transfer committee. We just we described it wrong.
Oh dear.
Someone with firefighting the Hibs at the end of the day, like it's unreal.
We need that picture of the boy for the second Iraq war going, there's no transfer committee. There are no tanks.
Right, just very quickly before we wrap up, because we're almost out of time here. So Tuesday night away to Dundee, quick score prediction from you, Tony.
You know what? Let's have some 1-0 Hibs. Just for fun.
A Charlie Adam assist.
Yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely. Right across the goal.
Colin.
They can still stay up, eh? Like if they win both.
Technically, I think they're
Like, no sure they won
fucking-
back-to-back
aye.
games this season. Like, but
No since they sacked James McPake.
Aye.
Actually, I think that was the last time they won.
McGee's not won one match. No.
No, amazing. Sacked the boy, won 2 in a row, and never won one since. No.
Aye. John.
I don't know how this is going to happen, but I reckon it's going to be like 3 or 4-0 Hibs. Because, and hear me out on
Talking
this.
of sure working.
Hear me out. I think if I've learned anything about football in the 39 years that I've been on this earth, is that there is always, in any shitty season, there is always that one unexpected, totally out of the blue result, and you think, where the fuck did that come from? Hibs have not had that this season.
We've got a Hampden.
Aye, well, maybe to a
Rangers.
certain degree, aye.
But things weren't quite as bad then as they are now. I don't know. 'Cause
And
I
it
mean,
feels like
the best example of that, John, is when we beat Rangers at Ibrox 3-0 when Liam Miller scored. And that was like the most out of the blue result you've ever. Caldwell hadn't even won a game yet, and that was the most bizarre sort of concept we'd ever seen.
So, aye, 3-4-0.
I think that
James
means
Scott's
Dundee
gonna
are winning, on that logic, Dundee are winning. The relegation pretty much sealed in. They'll fucking scud us.
Oh,
so.
Colin and Matty, you were there for James Scott assist. That is a I was there moment.
Aye.
When you witnessed James Scott
That's what I tell
contributing
people.
in a Hibs shot.
That's what I tell people when I say that. I saw like half of Amadou Conte's goals for Hibs. I missed the 2 that were like abroad against Metro or something.
Right, well, that's us out of time. So, Tony, thanks very much for giving up your evening to come on and talk to us. It's been a pleasure having you on. And
Not at all.
good
My
to-
pleasure.
good to have somebody that kens what they're talking about. A nice wee change. I would thoroughly recommend people go and listen to the Terrace and tune into Views to the Terrace when that's back on the TV. John, Colin, we will be going on to now to record Longbangers Extra for subscribers. And if you want to subscribe and hear more of this, you can do so at longbangers.hubwave.net. That was somebody asked about that as well, Colin, didn't they, on the question?
I think you had answered them, DM'd them though. You couldn't get logged on.
I was going to pretend that they hadn't answered it, DM'd, so that we could promote it here.
Oh, okay. I carry on. Sorry.
Aye,
Delete that.
that's all right. It's fucked now, isn't it?
A peek behind the curtain. Yeah.
What was that? The name of that address there, Matt?
It was longbangers.hubwave.net, and you can subscribe for just £3 a month. Anyway, so we're away to a squad review to see who we're keeping and who we're not keeping for next season. Tony,
Shouldn't it take
we'll
too
let
long?
you get over your Sunday night because I'm sure you have better things to do. So until then, folks, we'll catch you next time.
County line, I pledged upon. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't